Hello world. One of the most distinguishing features of electronic music is sidechain compression, sometimes called volume ducking or simply just sidechaining.
Can we call you Al, or maybe just Din? Or how about Laddie?
In this video, we'll be focusing specifically on kick sidechaining. The basic setup looks like this, with a compressor expanded to reveal the hidden sidechain button and the reference signal set to come from the kick, so that the volume of this track ducks down whenever the kick hits. This is what we get.
1, 2, 3.
And it sounds, well, okay. It's probably 80% of the way there. But you don't come to this channel to settle for 80%. On top of that, this setup would be a nightmare to control if we decide to change the kick or the way the compression is dialed in. So let's go through the 4 quick workflow tips we can use to polish this up and make the workflow much easier. 1. Ableton Live 8 Compressor. To get an immediate response from the compressor when the kick hits, the attack time needs to be at the lowest possible setting. However, you find that when you do this, the Ableton compressor will give you clicks galore. While you could compromise by increasing the attack time, the default solution amongst pro Ableton users is to use the Live 8 version compressor, which Jimmy Allison, the Austin Ableton tutor, has made freely available, and it works a treat. Simply load it onto the track instead of the default compressor, and make sure it's set to the FF1 setting, which stands for no effing pops. And don't worry, it won't override the native live compressor, it just gets added as a new device. There's a link in the description below. 2. EQing the incoming sidechain signal. You'll notice that the volume ducking on these tracks is going on for quite some time, even sometimes not recovering before the next kick. By the way, bonus tip, set your compressor to activity view by clicking this button here. In fact, once you've done that, just go ahead and save this as default device. I rarely find myself using the other 2 views. Okay, so yes, long recovery times. But if we could reduce this recovery time, we could then control it ourselves with the release parameter. By enabling the EQ and setting it to low cut, only the high frequency part, the transient, engages the sidechain, giving a much shorter and controllable ducking time. Three. Different kick, same sidechain. Let's say the kick sample you started with was just any old kick to get the vibe going, and now you want to swap it. Well, firstly, in this setup, because we use audio samples of the kick, we'd have to manually go through and change each individual clip. Though, you can work around this by fannying around with the file manager and replacing the file. Anyway, what you can't work around is the fact that the sidechain now sees a completely different signal, so you now have to go back and adjust the compressor all over again. If only there was a way to feed the sidechain with the same consistent signal, no matter what kick is used. Well, with Ableton Drum Rack, you can set this up in seconds. Launch the drum rack and get it going with a kick sample. Now drag in an operator device down where it says drop device here. Pull the decay and release right down, change the oscillator wave to white noise, and turn the volume up to 0 dB. And listen to what you've made. A nice, clean, short sidechain trigger. As a side note, we could have used a white noise sample here instead, but this way, when we save the instrument rack, it will always work, regardless of any sample files getting moved around over time. And now, For the pièce de résistance, open up the input-output section and select the click to play from the same received value as the kick. Now the two are linked, so whenever you play a kick, the trigger plays also. Now simply place a utility at the end and set it to mute so that only the kick is audible, even though the sidechain trigger is playing. Finally, give the trigger a useful name to tidy everything up. We can now select this sidechain trigger in the compressor, which we use pre-effects, in other words, before the utility which is set to mute. Now, I'm free to search for the perfect kick while maintaining a consistent sidechain trigger. This setup is saved as my default drum rack, and I can't tell you how many hours it has saved me. If you're not always using the drum rack for drums, like some kind of madman, you could always just save it as a preset. 4. Return bus sidechaining.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, so the last issue left to resolve here is that we have multiple compressor instances doing sidechaining. Aside from the fact that we're frivolously whoring out our CPU, we also have to adjust every compressor whenever we decide to make an adjustment. I usually work around this by making a beast of a group with all the instruments I want to sidechain. And it does the trick, but it often means having to completely reorder my projects so that I have all the sidechained groups and tracks all within one group. Instead, place the compressor in a return track. Then simply set whichever groups or tracks you wish to sidechain to output to sends only, and then drag the slider to send them to the compressor. And there you have it, a single compressor for all your sidechaining. Now, time for action. Pick just one of these quick workflow methods, whichever intrigued you the most, and start trying it out, right now. Any one of these will take you 20 seconds tops to implement, but could save you hours in the long run. Save this video and return to it whenever you feel ready to try adding another technique to your workflow. Click.